Hey guys, so the audio for my original video was really off, so I decided to re-upload this. Like, most of the audio was copyrighted, so I was kind of worried about that, so I decided to remove the audio, but then it removed the whole thing, which was kind of pointless. So I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just talk for this video instead? Isn't that more fun? Or annoying? You guys can decide that. So for this video, at first I was like, should I just talk about the speed painting process? But, yeah, it's kind of boring. So I was like, let me do something else instead. So instead, today I am going to read you some creepypastas that are short, just because I want to. I saw a news article for it and it looked interesting. So I'm just gonna do that. Alright? Alright? Capiche? You got it? You understand? You getting me? Let's take a look. So I saw an article that said 8 short creepypasta horror stories that will make you shudder. And they could look kind of long, so I didn't want to read that one. So here's 6 terrifying short stories you should read alone in the dark. It's currently 3:28 a.m. because I don't sleep. And this is my creative time. Trademarked. Okay, so 6 terrifying short stories you should read alone in the dark. The first one is called Wristbands. When you're admitted to a hospital, they place on your wrist a white wristband with your name on it. But there are other different colored wristbands which symbolize other things. The red wristbands are placed on dead people. There was one surgeon who worked on night shift in a school hospital. He had just finished an operation and was on his way down to the basement. He entered the elevator, and there was just one person there. He casually chatted with the woman while the elevator descended. When the elevator door opened, another woman was about to enter, when the doctor slammed the close button and punched the button to the highest floor. Surprised, the woman reprimanded the doctor for being rude and asked why he did not let the other woman in. The doctor said, "That was the woman I just operated on. She died while I was doing the operation. Didn't you see the red wristband she was wearing?" The woman smiled, raised her arm and said, "Something like this?" Oh shit! That's some creepy ass story, I guess. Yeah, that was okay. I feel like I heard this one before. Let's go to the next one. The unbranded laptop. Now that's true horror. My brother moved out of the house back in 2002. Once he got his job as a computer technician, and he recently went missing. When I went to his house, it was locked, with 3 sheets of printer paper taped to the front door. While coming home from work that day, I noticed someone had left their damaged gray laptop laying in the middle of the driveway. I got out of my car to examine it more carefully. The LCD definitely showed signs of user-related damage, as there was a large hole on the left side of the screen that fit a standard Phillips head screwdriver perfectly. There was a webcam above the display as well, and it was also destroyed with the same screwdriver. Other than those, however, everything else on the computer showed minor signs of wear, like almost all of the keyboard keys were faded, but nothing to the extent that it could be considered unusable. I looked at the back of the display to find out what brand it is, and yet I couldn't find anything. I looked at the entire laptop shell, and there was no text or logo stating what brand it is. In fact, there was no warranty sticker, no proof of license sticker on the bottom, no text whatsoever. What's even more odd was the fact that their only ports on the laptop was the VGA port for connecting an external display and a USB port. How long could this laptop have possibly run without a charging port to recharge the battery? It must have been a very low-end laptop where you have to remove the battery pack and put it into its own charging dock. Why did it exactly have a webcam? Why did it exactly have a webcam though? What? The wording for the second story is really weird. Okay. Curious as to what exactly is on the laptop, I ran inside to my basement, where my old desktop was currently being stored. The only reason it was down there was because I forgot to bring the behemoth to the local Sarcan to recycle it. What the hell is Sarcan? I would have been currently using it as my regular computer, but it takes 5 to 6 hours to fully boot because the system always goes through recovery mode every time you start it. And the processor is way too slow to recover everything on the 500 GB hard drive I had installed on it. Alright, so this is a story. Like, I'm gonna finish it, but at the same time, it's It's very long and very descriptive about laptops, and I have no idea, like, I don't understand laptops at all. So I'm reading this and I'm just like, okay, so you find a used laptop on the floor. It has a Phillips screwdriver hole in it. Everything else looks fine and you want it? Like, or, like, the main character is for some reason really, like, fascinated by this laptop. Anyway. Okay, so 120 MHz Pentium processor doesn't get you far. Well, anyways, I removed the old LG CRT monitor from the desktop and plugged it into the laptop. I went to push the power button when I stopped. There was no way this was going to work. The battery has to be dead by now. Click below for next page. Alright, so that was page 1. There's more. I rummaged around the basement to find my battery voltage tester and immediately withdrew the battery from the laptop and checked the voltage. Lo and behold, it had no charge. Well, might as well just leave it down there. I'll bring all of this computer junk to Sarkcan tomorrow morning. With that, I unplugged the display from the laptop, put it back into the desktop, and simply left everything downstairs. After leaving the basement, I went to go watch TV for about 3 hours or so before going to bed. It's very specific time. I was suddenly awakened from my deep slumber by the sound of the Windows 2000 startup jingle and fell out of my bed. What kind of old ass computer does he have? Okay. It was so deafeningly loud, I swore someone was holding a pair of speakers right next to my ears. After I fell out of bed, I stood up in a groggy daze and for a minute or so trying to figure out what that sound was. The desktop! I must have accidentally hit the power switch while trying to switch monitors. I simply walked to the basement, but froze in the middle of the steps. I just remembered there was no way my computer could have started up, because I have Windows 95 installed on my desktop. How does he know the jingle for Windows 2000 then? Anyway, I was reluctant to go down the steps after that, but my common sense started kicking in and I thought I might be getting my OSs mixed up. When I walked down, I was shocked to see that my desktop wasn't on. In fact, I remembered it wasn't even plugged in. I had to make sure of it though. I checked behind the desktop and everything else was plugged in, except for the tower. There's absolutely no chance of the laptop turning on. That's impossible. I removed the battery from the laptop again and rechecked the voltage. This time, I couldn't get a direct number. The voltage tester was just going insane. I reinserted the battery, pressed the power button on the laptop. Some indicator lights flashed, meaning the computer definitely started, except this time, the startup jingle wasn't played at all. I need to see what's going on there. I connected the CRT monitor back into the laptop, and what I saw was a bare desktop with 3 icons in the corner. The taskbar was empty, and there was no start menu button. The wallpaper was black. Why would anyone do this to their desktop? Anyone could remove all the icons, but they must be really skilled hackers to remove the start menu button. Of all the 3 icons, one was a games folder, one was a videos folder, and the last one was the DOS command prompt program. Maybe this was a kid's laptop. Checking on the games folder confirmed my suspicion. It was a little girl who must have owned this laptop. I felt some remorse for the poor girl because there was only one game in the folder, and I have no idea what the hell it was. The program name was princess.exe. Beautiful. I clicked on it just to see what the game was like. A fully animated title screen came up with various generic fairy tale princesses twirling around the screen, and the logo flew down with a bunch of sparkly doves holding it. Okay, that's cute. The game was called Princess Creator. Make yourself beautiful. Ah, so it must have been one of those low-budget put JPEGs of various clothing items onto the photo of yourself games. Well, I was right. As the menu popped up, I was given the option to dress up or to view pretty pictures. I wanted to see what the girl looked like, so I clicked on the second option. She had to have been no more than 5, and on top of that, she looked very cute. She was of either Mexican or Spanish origin. She wore a somewhat tattered white dress with a small red frill around the sleeves and collar. It was small roses on it. I smiled as she looked like she had a lot of fun putting a virtual tiara on her head. Yep, that's, However, browsing through the photos, about halfway through, there are pictures of a room with nothing else but a bed inside. She must have been dodging the camera for the hell of it, I guess. After that, I felt I've been seen enough with that program. Might as well go see the other 2 files on the laptop. I decided to go into the command prompt and see if I could locate any other files on the hard drive. I simply got a colon / thingy line with no driver letter. Okay, that's really strange, I thought. I typed into the command box start C. How do I say command prompts? This is really confusing. Okay. To see if I could open the directory I wanted to explore. I pressed enter and DOS simply gave me the start is not recognized as an internal or external command, operable program, or batch file. After a few seconds, the program crashed, bringing me back to the desktop. So I guess the last thing to look at is the videos, as I double-clicked the folder. The screen faded to black. I thought it had crashed, but I noticed that there was a small dash flashing on the top left corner. Suddenly, the text start videos 01.wvmv flashed briefly, then a video appeared in full screen. It was the girl again. This time, she was smiling, bouncing slightly in excitement. Her happiness made my heart feel warm. My guess was that she must have been recording herself play the dress-up game with the webcam. At first, she was simply moving her fingers across the trackpad, clicking, then giggling excitedly for a bit. She must have been laughing at the things she put on herself in the game. After about 2 minutes or so, the screen would cut to black for a fraction, and a second and would return to the girl playing the game. This time, however, she was dressed differently, in a simple pink t-shirt with the words, "Go, go, girl," stitched in glitter. I guess the game would simply record her every time she started it without her knowing. That made me sort of uneasy. I mean, why would anyone program a game to do that? Whatever. I think it's going to be the same sort of thing over and over with this video. I might as well turn off the computer. I reached over and pressed the power button, and it didn't shut off this time. The video continued to play, and I saw the girl this time was wearing an orange tank top with nothing on it. She was smiling and giggling as usual, so I thought maybe I can turn off the computer after the video is done. It couldn't be that long. The video seemed to drag on, with more cuts of her playing the game in a different outfit, and I started to doze off. However, the next cut in the video, the girl was just staring at the camera with an expressionless look on her face. Wondering what the hell is going on, I became interested in the video again. This one didn't make me smile. It made me extremely uneasy watching her without her usual smiley face put on. It was dark in the room, and there was a desk light on the side. She was in some sort of nightwear. What is she going to do? She sat there for a minute with that blank expression, like she wasn't thinking at all. I started to get really tense as if something awful was about to happen. That actually does creep me out. I don't like horror elements where it's coming from a haunted computer, because that's too real, and like I have a computer, so relatable. She bent over and picked up a handsaw from the left side of where she was sitting. She held it in front of her, showing it to the camera. Then she placed the jagged blade on the side of her cheek. I cringed at what I was seeing. What the fuck is going on? Slowly, she began slicing into her right cheek. Blood drizzled down her neck as she did it. Slowly, the side of her teeth began to show after about 10 seconds. As the saw went lower down her face, more of her teeth began to show on the side. Blood almost covered everything on the right side of her face. She eventually got to the bottom of her jawbone and sawed a tiny piece off of it. Her cheek fell to the ground with a small thud, and she put the saw in her lap and continued to stare at the camera, emotionless. I couldn't take much more of this and tore the battery out of the laptop, but the video continued to play. What? That took a pretty extreme turn. Then the next video cut began. The girl screamed in extreme pain. I almost fell out of my seat. It was so loud. She screamed and put hands over her now absent cheek. What? I'm trying to imagine what she did. Okay. She continued to scream in agony for about 10 seconds, then a knocking was heard on the side. It was a woman, yelling in a language I couldn't understand. She was pounding the door, but not opening it. The girl must have locked it. I tried to unplug the monitor from the laptop, but it was stuck in. I didn't want to see what happens next. The screaming continued, and the yelling continued up until the next cut. She was back into her emotional state again, but her cheek was still missing. The woman was pounding on the door and yelling still. The woman must be her mother. The girl then raised the saw up to her right shoulder and began cutting just as slowly as last time. I gagged at the sight of this. It was a holocaust of wrong. The blood began to stream out in all directions. The yelling behind the door fell silent. I bet she's trying to get someone to help her, either the father or brother or whatnot. When she hit the bone, an awful grinding noise could be heard. I covered my ears, but I still could hear it vividly through my hands. I noticed that a piece of her muscle got stuck on one of the steel teeth of the saw. This cut ended a lot faster than before, and the next cut was the same thing, except the color from her face began to drain, and her pain-ridden screams became quickly weaker. Her clothing was completely red with blood on the right side. Apparently this girl is 5 years old. Why does she have a saw in her room? Like, who looks at their 5-year-old and is like, yep, you know what you need in the corner of your room? One big-ass saw. The article is called 6 Terrifying Short Stories You Should Read Alone in the Dark. This is very long for a short story. I've been reading for a while. Like, the first story was short. That's, commendable. Correct. What I expected. Second story, this is going on for a while. Anyway, let's keep going. Then she became emotionless again. Oh God, what is she going to cut off next? The mother returned back with what seemed to be 2 other people, and they were all yelling in the same language as before. She raised the saw and began cutting the right side of her head off. Loud thuds appeared and beat at the door. They were trying to knock it down. She slowly worked her way down with blood going in all sorts of directions. The thuds still repeated themselves on the door. I was mostly confused as to how she keeps going even after she went through her brain with the saw. Her right eye rolled into the back of her head. Blood began leaking out of it. She eventually made it to the top of her mouth where she hacked her way through bone and teeth. It was the single worst sound I had ever heard in my entire life. I still hear it in the back of my head some days. The thuds continued, and deep in the back of my mind, I hoped they wouldn't be able to break the door down so they didn't have to see such an awful sight. She finally made it through, and with that, the right side of her head fell to the side of her neck, held on only by a piece of skin on her neck. I remember the chilling sound of her jaw being unhinged from her head when it was tugged violently by the force of her half-head. She put the saw down to her side. The cut ended, and the next cut, she simply fell face down onto the desk. Half her brain fell out of the desk from the impact, and her eyes were removed from its socket. Blood pooled on the desk. The people trying to break down the door finally made it in, and they almost blacked out from what they saw. Their daughter was in pieces. The mother vomited and ran out of the room. The father ran to her daughter, put her head back together and cried, holding her head at the side of his. The other man, presumably the daughter's older brother, simply stared in horror at what he saw. The horrifying self-mutilation finished with that cut, and the screen cut to the empty room with the bed. With a sigh of relief that it was over, I just sat there, breathing heavily and sweating. I didn't realize that the room was so hot until now. I have so many questions to ask. How was it possible? It frightened me, and I spent a good 30 minutes sitting in the chair, and finally, I got the courage to get up out of the seat. I looked at the laptop for what I hoped was the last time. The room with the bed glared on the screen. Then it cut to something else unexpectedly. It was a cut of my face in the basement using the laptop. Was that the first time he used it with the princess game? Is that what I'm understanding from that? Or is that like, haha, that's gonna be you soon, son? I don't really appreciate that type of story just because it's mostly just like pure horror. It's not necessarily something where it's like, oh, haha, fun for the whole family. No, it's just pure horror and gore. So it wasn't necessarily scary, it was just really strange. Alright guys, I had to cut out and come back. So I was reading a story about the goat man. It was literally 5 article pages long. So I'm gonna link the article in the bottom so you can see how long that story was, but I'm trying to keep it within a reasonable amount of time, this video, and I was like, nah, I'm not reading a 5-page story. Okay. The story itself had a lot of grammatical mistakes and it was really hard to read, so this makes it easier for me as well, instead of like trying to figure out what to cut out because I read it weird because the grammar was just all over the place. So I'm just gonna read this normally now. Okay, so the next story is The Girl in the Photograph. One school day, a boy named Tom was sitting in class and doing math. It was 6 more minutes until after school. As he was doing his homework, something caught his eye. His desk was next to the window, and he turned and looked at the grass outside. It looked like a picture. When school was over, he ran to the spot where he saw it. He ran fast so no one else could grab it. He picked it up and smiled. It had a picture of the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She had a dress with tights on and red shoes, and her hands were formed into a peace sign. She was so beautiful he wanted to meet her, so he ran all over the school and asked everyone if they knew her or have ever seen her before. But everyone he asked said no. He was devastated. When he was home, he asked his older sister if she knew the girl, but unfortunately, she said no. It was pretty late, so Tom walked up the stairs, placed the picture on his bedside table, and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Tom was awakened by a tap on his window. It was like a nail tapping. He got scared. After the tapping, he heard a giggle. He saw a shadow near his window, so he got out of his bed, walked toward his window, opened it up, and followed the giggling. By the time he reached it, it was gone. The next day, again, he asked his neighbors if they knew her. Everybody said sorry, no. When his mother came home, he even asked her if she knew her. She said no. He went to his room, placed the picture on his desk, and fell asleep. Once again, he was awakened by a tapping. He took the picture and followed the giggling. He walked towards the road when suddenly he got hit by a car. He was dead with the picture in his hand. The driver got out of his car and tried to help him, but it was too late. Suddenly, he saw a picture and looked at it. He saw a cute girl holding up 3 fingers. Ba-ba-ba. You can see what the ending was. Ooh, scary story, spooky spooky. Is that it? Yeah, that was it. Okay, so that wasn't even 6 stories, that was 5. Oh yeah, sorry. So the 5th story was Squidward died, or Squidward suicide. I don't know if you guys heard of this creepypasta. It's actually a classic creepypasta. It's about like SpongeBob and that there was a frame where he kills himself. It's a long story too. I don't know how these are short stories for anyone. Because I can literally put any creepypasta and say that's a short story at this point, if that's the case, and that's how they commend short stories. But anyway, this is my video. Just, I did this for the heck of it, just because I can, and the audio was all screwed up, so why not make a video where I read, like, 3 creepypastas horribly. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. If you want more weird videos like this, let me know, because it's kind of fun to do this, and it's kind of fun to read these stories, just because I read a lot of creepypastas as I usual. But again, your choice. Yep. But yes, thank you for watching, and I will see you for my next video. Bye for now.